Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe says he will accept defeat and step down if he loses tomorrow. Mugabe calling a news conference in Harare earlier today. eNCA Africa Editor Chris Maroleng was at that briefing in the capital and joins us now on Newsnight. Chris, a very good evening to you. I understand this news conference was somewhat unusual and it was unscheduled.
Absolutely unusual developments here in Zimbabwe. Actually, President Robert Mugabe calling a press conference. Now, during this press conference, as you indicated earlier on, Jeremy, he indicated that if he is defeated at the polls, he will step down gracefully. And he also hopes that if he is successful, the loser in this poll will also concede as much as he is willing to do so should he lose these elections.
There are no official opinion polls, but this election, according to the pundits, yourself included, is almost too close to call at this point.
Certainly too close to call, but one of the key things that have really made it difficult for pundits and others like myself to try and predict a possible outcome have been some of the difficulties that have marred the possible credibility of these elections. And these really relate to some of the logistical impediments that have been placed in the way of having what you could say a fully free and fair election. These include a voters' roll that still contain the names of people who have long ceased deceased. They are calling them ghost voters. Certainly also, Jeremy, is the fact that if you look at the polling stations and their distribution, one would also consider or analyze that the split between rural and urban could possibly benefit ZANU-PF, particularly when you consider the fact that they've generally in past elections enjoyed a higher voter turnout from the rural areas. And certainly there have been other logistical issues relating to the procedures that have not been followed by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. In actual fact, just the other day in his final rally, the Star Rally in Harare, Morgan Tsvangirai indicated that if the ZEC, that is the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, is unable to pull off these elections, the commissioners should step down.
Chris, the president also telling reporters that voters' roll, that contested voters' roll that you referred to, has now been distributed to all polling stations. Can we confirm this, one? And two, if we can, it's too little too late, isn't it?
Well, one of the key things is that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission earlier on said that they would only be able to deliver these voters' rolls to the polling stations on voting day, which is the 31st of July, tomorrow. We are on the eve of elections, and you can surmise from this, Jeremy, that in normal elections, the voters' roll should have been made available not just in hard copy to the various stakeholders involved in the elections, but more importantly to these polling stations so that they could be verified, so that we could check which polling stations you should go to, and more importantly, that the actual people who are going to go to these polling stations go to the correct polling station to cast their votes. None of this has really happened, and it really raises serious doubts about whether this election could be viewed as credible considering some of these logistical challenges. What we cannot verify at this stage is that indeed all of the polling stations have received this voters' roll at this very, very late stage. We are, you will recall, Jeremy, on the eve of elections.
Chris, just finally and briefly, I think it's the Associated Press that is reporting tonight that heavily armed police have been deployed in potential election flashpoints. But we're not too concerned about violence tomorrow. It's possibly closer to the announcement of a result and when that result is finally announced.
Absolutely, Jeremy. I'm sure that the state security forces here are on high alert. President Robert Mugabe, during that press conference, actually thanked the people of Zimbabwe, including the MDC, for a relatively peaceful campaign period. But as you indicate, typically in Zimbabwe, the trouble normally occurs after the elections, that is after the results have been released, and certainly they will be concerned that if the people do not have a return at these polls that they were expecting, there could possibly be an outbreak of violence. But we have been seeing police detachments being deployed. Harare, where we are, is traditionally an MDC stronghold, and we're beginning to see a stepping up of the security presence even here in Harare. This is possibly the case right through Zimbabwe as they prepare for elections and a possible outcome.
Later tonight, Newsnight is live in Bulawayo. We'll be talking to my colleague Ben Said. That was eNCA Africa Editor Chris Maroleng for Newsnight in Harare.
News that moves. eNCA.com.